So when we get into the current situation with the YMCA, the first place we must start is with the Pineville Club, because that is the entity that she wants to give to the YMCA, as you know. So how does all what I've just told you relate to that? Well, the initial vision and hope for the Pineville Club was that it could be supported by the village residents. There's no legal document that guarantees it'll be a private club and will only have village residents and all that stuff, but that was the vision. That was the vision before the Pineville Club was built. And when the Pineville Club was built in 2007, 2008, Becky used her own money, both from loans from the bank as well as otherwise, to fund it. And so she builds the club in her LLC, wholly owned by her, Riverdale Investments LLC, in 2007, 2008. What was immediately clear is that the village residents could not float that boat. There was not enough membership in the village to even come close to paying the operating expense of the club. So from the very beginning, and this is something that somehow I think is lost in some of the discussion that's going on, from the very beginning, it was not a captive private club of the village. It was very important for the village residents to be members of the club, and that effort was made in part by saying that no pools in the village, and I'll talk about that later. But it just wasn't sufficient, so from the very beginning there was outside membership that was allowed, both inside Flowers Plantation, outside the village, but inside Flowers Plantation, also outside of Flowers Plantation. And that remains the case today. So at that time, the village covenants required that residents of the village be members, which was necessary to even start the club. They needed to have a captive audience, and they did. And of course, everybody who did that knew that was the case, knew they had the club, and the club was very close to them. So it was a natural symbiotic relationship. However, that's not the whole story. The whole story also continues with the Flowers Parkway. That was initially conceived of as perhaps a private road inside the village. It did not operate that way, and has not operated that way since 2009. There were gates that controlled access from after 9 p.m. until 5 a.m., but 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. They were open, and all of the members of the club, be they village, other Flowers Plantation, or outside Flowers Plantation, used it. So that has been going on for 11 years or more. And that is the case going forward. I'll talk about the village and the roads in a minute. But in terms of the club, the operation of the club, the point is that it's always been what it is right now, in a mixture of membership interest in the club. The operation of the club has been exceedingly difficult. My view of that, in seeing the things that have arisen, is because there is a demand, as it should be, for a community of high quality, not all out throughout Flowers Plantation, but certainly the village, there is a high expectation of the amenities and services that will be provided. It's been difficult to meet those needs, but what's been impossible is to meet those needs at the level of dues people are willing to pay. So I don't think most people know the history of the finances of the club, even though they've been looked at in various ways through the years. And again, back to contrary of people believing that Becky took money from it, it's the opposite. She's put money into it. I want to talk about that. But it's been difficult because of this demand for high quality and services, and then what does it cost to do that? And the membership has never been sufficient to float that boat. Now, let me share with you some facts. These are general facts. They're all can be proved. They have been proved. They've been in financials and so forth. But these are some facts when you start thinking about the Pineville Club that you should consider, particularly in its situation right now. Currently, there are about 985 members. That has fluctuated. At one point, there were more than 1,200 members, I think, and then when the club did not require village residents to be members a couple of years ago, some dropped out. So there's been an ebb and flow, but currently there's right at 1,000. The current club dues are $112 a month. The capital cost for construction of the club and all the additions and improvements, and I'm not going to go through all those, there's been a parking lot, there's been this added and that added, but to build it, I'm not talking about the land, I'm just talking about to build it, to improve it, and to fix it. Capital cost through the years, through the present, is about $6.5 million. Becky has loaned or paid into the club an additional $3.22 million. About $2 million of that has been funds used to pay down the debt from $6.5 million to $4.6 million. The other funds have been to make up operational deficits for the club, the difference between dues, which are the gross revenues, and the operational expenses. The value of the land is about 7 acres, is estimated, on which the club is built, it's estimated to be worth about $1 million. The total amount of money Becky has invested in the club and not been repaid for is about $9 million. That's 4.6 current loan, 3.22 infusions of additional money, land value of $1 million. It's a little under $9 million. The club has not paid her back this money. In fact, it's not paid any of this money back to her. She has not done what most businesses would do, which is to have the debt for the facility that's being operated and amortized over a reasonable 15 years, 20 years at a reasonable interest rate, and then have a monthly cost. So whatever operation is taking place, it needs to not only float the boat for the variable expenses such as employees and utilities and taxes, etc., but also to pay back the capital cost of the facilities. That's never been done. She has not taken out of the gross revenues repayment of her loans. So most businesses would do that. She hasn't done it. She hasn't done it because the revenues and the dues simply have never been sufficient to pay even the operating expenses. So if you can't pay for operating it, you certainly can't pay capital costs. So she hasn't demanded that. So how is it, given those facts, and I suspect you didn't know those facts, but given those facts, having invested $9 million in the club, why would Becky give it to the YMCA without receiving any money to compensate her for the $9 million debt she's owed? Why would she ever allow her investment in the club to escalate to this point without any payments at all to reduce that debt? Why? Well, first, Becky knew that dues could not be raised to the level necessary to properly fund the club. Right now, with 985 members, if it would take well over $200 a month to fund the current club operation and to pay an amortized debt just for the capital cost of $6.5 million. That's not the loan or any other funding. That's just the cost of the structure. That alone, over a 15-year period, amortized with monthly payments at a 5% interest, and you add that to the operational expenses, would mean dues would go from $112 to $200 if membership stayed at $985. If you made the club a captive private organization whose members were only residents of the village, which has never been, as I noted a minute ago, the monthly dues would likely exceed $500. The second reason Becky has done what she's done with the finances is she knows how difficult it is to provide the amenities and services the club offers. It simply isn't possible to expect proper management from anyone without vast experience and commitment. Some of that experience she's gained through the years, but she's also had numerous consultants and other folks help her evaluate the club's operations, but she's resisted opinions and, I guess, advice to increase the dues because she knew that wouldn't work. Hence, we find ourselves with the YMCA. The Y, as I'll call it, it has the experience. It has the resources. It will provide an exciting array of programs and services. We know it can deliver. We also know that it delivers at a reasonable cost. There is nobody you can compare to all of these factors and say they would be as good a choice as the Y. It just doesn't exist. That is an ideal choice. Now, it's true when you think about the Y. Some of these members will say that are the dissenting voice, well, we can't drink at the club. Well, that's true. The Y doesn't allow alcohol as it policies and procedures it will bring with it from what it's established at its other facilities. It also is not going to probably have, we think, the fine dining or the more choices of food. I don't know if you call it fine dining, but certainly the better food that's now offered through the club. But however, those concerns really are probably meaningful only to a very small minority of club members. Those wanting to promote family activities in a family environment should rejoice at the prospect of the Y. Those that want to drink and enjoy fine dining may indeed have to do that elsewhere, but to accommodate that, or try to, Becky has proposed possibly having the Dr. Watson Inn serve as a venue for some alcohol service with more fine dining on some regular basis. And that would look to be a good option if the Y is not going to be able to fill that boat. Please ask yourself as you are deliberating where you're going to cast your vote or your support, yay or nay, for the Y, is what in the world is nefarious about Becky giving away the club, writing off a $9 million debt in order to secure a stable, competent, reputable, and financially solvent YMCA, which will deliver more services that really matter to most club members at a reasonable cost. It's very difficult to see how that prospect is a bad thing. Well, we don't know the answer to that, but our information is that a vocal minority wants to generate opposition to the Y gift. The first question you should ask before joining this effort is, what happens if they indeed blow up the Y deal? What happens then? It's possible there will be no club. Becky is under no legal obligation to continue to pour money into the club to maintain any specific level of amenities. Surely it would be a negative situation to close it. It would hurt everybody, including her. She doesn't want that. You shouldn't want that. But that is door B or door C if door A we don't go through. Another option is that Becky would raise the dues to reflect the proper amount necessary to fund the operation of the club, including paying back her debt. She doesn't want to do this either because she knows that club memberships, even in this club, upscale club, is price sensitive. You go up, your membership's going to go down. Nobody has to be a member of the club anymore. And what happens then? It causes a downward spiral. You set the price saying, well, we're going to have $220. If we have 1,000 members, then you have 200 members drop. Then you go up to 320. So there is that relationship between price and membership, and what you may end up with is that vocal minority who may have money and want things their own way, but then they would be paying a rate they won't want to pay. So the vocal minority will say, sell us the club. Well, what's wrong with that? If Becky's primary motivation was the finances, she wouldn't just give this to the Y. She may say, okay, vocal minority, pay me $9 million. They say yes. What's going to happen then? Well, she knows the club can't survive because the due structure would have to completely be altered. For all these reasons, she's concluded that a transfer to the Y is the best option for a healthy club. And that healthy club is one that provides the best services desired by the most members at the most reasonable cost. And that is what the Y will provide.